Hello and welcome back to Loose Talk. I'm your host that you love to ghost, Ian Bryce. Today's episode, I'm going to be talking about my most recent release, This Is Goodbye. The story behind This Is Goodbye isn't all that long-winded, but there is a story. There have been a few iterations of this track, simply because when I wrote it, it felt important because this was the beginning of like this sort of breakthrough that I had after a pretty long period of writer's block back in 2018. But before that happened, there's a little bit of a preamble that led up to this phase in my life where I just wasn't making anything that I liked. I feel like very few things stuck, and I was just in a really strange place in my life. Didn't really understand what the hell I was doing or how I ended up essentially back at square one. After really trying my hardest to sort of get my shit together, for lack of a better term. So to start, the year was 2017, and I had just fallen on my face again. I just felt like a total screw up, and really, I think this must have been my first experience with like a real sense of depression. Like I was all kinds of messed up. This was the first time in my life that I had actually seriously took myself to task about being a musician, I guess, or like pursuing music as a career. So, that's the kind of state of mind I was in. And at a certain point during that, I was just like, well, I guess I'll go to college or something because I didn't know what else to do. There was an audio program. Audio program wasn't great, but I joined the audio program, and then I also ran sound at a local venue. Did that for about a year while I was in school. So I got a lot of experience out of that, how to think on your toes, and how to deal with a lot of different kinds of people, a lot of different musicians. In retrospect, I'm happy that things kind of went the way that they did, because the timing was really kind of divine. Nonetheless, at the time, I wasn't really able to see the forest for the trees, or whatever they say. I was not happy. I was miserable. But there was this person in my life that I guess saw through all of that, and really appreciated what I had done previously with Loose Bolts, and didn't really judge me for being in the position that I was in, even though her life was considerably more challenging and difficult than mine. I think in a lot of respects, she didn't judge me. She seemed to like me and accept me for who I was. Irregardless, what ended up happening is I sort of realized that we weren't really a good fit for one another. I think we both would have liked for that to not be true, but that's the conclusion that I came to, and so we sort of went our separate ways. And this was after a year of me being in school, and during the summer break of the year 2018, I couldn't write anything that I liked. It was killing me. I was like, have I lost it? Like, have I lost my touch? Like I felt like an old man asking myself these kinds of questions. I was landscaping a lot with my friend Sam, and I was essentially living in between his house and my parents' house at the time, because the school that I attended at the time was very close to his house. So I was always back and forth between there. I kind of like unofficially had a room in his house. It was fun times. And but the thing about that room, there was always this really interesting vibe about this room. Is like every time I hung out in that room and played guitar or did anything musical, it just felt like gold. I was like really kind of perplexed by it for a long time. I was like, what is it about this room? Like, did somebody do like some DMT in here and not tell anybody? And the vibes are just here. Long story short, I was getting deeper into the sort of bigger sort of indie acts, I guess. And I was really inspired by Mac DeMarco at the time. And I really wanted like one of those guitars that he kind of made popular again, as far as I know. It's almost, it's like an indiscriminate sort of brand of guitar, but the one that I eventually found one for really cheap, and I picked it up. It was a '60s model Teisco with all the original electronics in it and all that stuff. One day I was just in that room. I just started, playing these sorts of, jazzy sort of chords, or these voicings rather. And This Is Goodbye pretty much just poured out of me immediately. So that's sort of the long and short of how This Is Goodbye came to be. I mentioned before, like, it was born out of that tension of really loving this person's company and appreciating it for what it was, but ultimately understanding that I don't think we were really compatible, like in a real way, or in a, I don't want to say a real way, but in a more logistical way. I don't know if that's too robotic to say or something, but that's what happened. But I cut the first demo of This Is Goodbye. This Is Goodbye in that room in the summer of 2018, and I still have that demo. So I reckon I'll play a little bit of that demo for you now. The inspirations for that original demo, some of them are probably more obvious than others might be. The most obvious, which I mentioned in the previous little segment, was Mac DeMarco. I mean, that was really particularly his song "My Kind of Woman." I was like obsessed with that song for a bit, and so that sort of inspired me to pick up one of those older guitars and just see what happened. When I decided to play it, and the one that I bought, luckily, was just so old and not really messed with for such a long time that I guess it just had some stuff waiting inside of it to be extracted or discovered or whatever it was. But that was the thing that really broke my writer's block streaks, so to speak. But other stuff that really informed the way that I was sort of hearing this song in my head while I was trying to demo it into reality. I was really into Swimming by Mac, like heavy. I love that album. The background vocals in particular really, I think, really kind of blew my mind. That record, and also a lot of the stuff from Folie à Deux by Fall Out Boy, sort of used background vocals in a similar way, or at least to me, it seems similar to where it's like this, like enveloping. It enveloped the song whenever they came in, and there was such a stark sort of contrast for when they were there and when they weren't, and it just made it feel like such a full experience, I guess. And so but in particular, I think the song "Hurt Feelings," or maybe even "Perfecto" by Mac Miller. It's funny how there are two different Macs that inspired this song, but "Perfecto" by Mac Miller is such a cool song. So I'll go ahead and play that one for you now. Another artist that was really inspiring to me at the time, sort of in a similar vein to Mac DeMarco, was this artist I just sort of randomly found. online. I think I found him on Spotify. Is Jakob Ogawa, and he's got a couple of really great bangers. There was one song in particular called "All My Love" that really blew my mind at that time. And again, a similar vein to Mac, but a lot more sophisticated in a different way, and really well put together music. And obviously similar guitar tone. I would assume he was using something vintage and cheap, maybe even Japanese. It almost sounded to me like he was recording this stuff to tape as well, which Mac is infamous for doing. Yeah, at that time, I was just thinking it would might be an interesting combination or juxtaposition to approach this sort of newer indie bedroom pop sort of sound, but as myself, simply because the things that are so deeply ingrained in me, most people wouldn't really think that those things would work well together. Like I think the most obvious sort of influence that I have when anybody hears me sing or perform or even write melodies or any of that stuff or write lyrics for that matter, is mostly like turn of the century emo records. I mean, stuff like Dashboard Confessional, the Get Up Kids, even Copeland, or maybe we could even say Bright Eyes, all that stuff. It's just a part of my musical makeup that is just always going to be there in pretty much anything that I do. And so yeah, I thought it'd be a cool thing to try and combine those two worlds. But back to Jakob Ogawa, great producer, great songwriter, multi instrumentalist as well, just like your boy. So I'm gonna play that song now, "All My Love" by Jakob Ogawa. Really, the last artist and or song that I want to mention here is really the most obvious one, and it's interesting how they inspired or influenced this track, because at first, what about them inspired me was again like background vocals and the sound and the way that they're mixed and sort of produced. That led to the way that I was approaching just making that demo, and really trying to complete the production on the 2019 uh, release of This Is Goodbye as well. Yeah, Beach House. I mean, it's especially the interesting thing now is like when I was trying to figure out how am I going to flip this song on its head again, or for the first time, really, how am I going to make a better version of this without just making a version that just, without essentially making the same exact song, but just higher quality or like recorded in a real studio or something? Like, what am I going to do that's actually different? That's going to make listening to this new version that I want to put out a worthwhile experience. So I went back. I ended up going back, and I was like, well, what about this? What about this Beach House track, Space Song? What was really inspiring to me about that? And I had to sort of remove the idea of the background vocals being the thing, because I just sort of decided that I just felt like I was doing too much with those. It was almost crowding or cluttering the track to a point where like it sounded cool, but when I took a step back, I was like, could do without it and still be powerful, right? Now, honestly, I may have taken a little too much out. I'm not really sure. That's at this point, that's not really for me to decide. Like, I think I ended up using two of the same sorts of synths that are in Space Song in this track. I don't really have any shame in doing that, because when stuff works, it just works. And that stuff works really well because they're timeless choices as far as sounds go. So there's a little bit of like a cheap sort of home organ, right? And then you got the Farfisa. Home organ is more of just complementing the mellotron. they're panned. One is panned hard right, and one's panned hard left. And then you got the farfisa is acting as more of like a rhythmic inclusion. You've got it hitting on the hi hat, hitting on the two and the four. Pretty simple stuff. And then you've also got these little melodic flourishes, these melody lines in between those 2 and 4 hits. I mean, you probably know this song, but I'm going to make you listen to it anyway because it's great. I still love this song, and I appreciate the inspiration. Thank you, Beach House. Well, that's going to be it for this episode of Loose Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in and for your support over the past year for all the new releases. I really hope you enjoy the new version of This Is Goodbye. And yeah, I guess that's all I got to say. I'll see you soon with more exciting stuff. Be sure to like and subscribe. Ciao.